I don't have a picture, and I'm not sure anybody really does, of what Donald Trump sees as a new Middle East.
Let's now welcome Karin von Hippel. He's former US State Department official and Director General of RUSI from 2015 to 2024. Hello to you, Karin.
Hi, John. How are you?
And well, thanks so much for joining us. On that last point from a Professor Randy, I mean, what do you say about that idea that Tehran has been developing a uranium for the purpose of bargaining, as a bargaining counter? Do you have any thought on that? Is Iran clearly seeking to develop a nuclear weapon for use as an instrument of power and threat?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt about that Iran has been pushing quite hard to develop a nuclear weapon ever since Donald Trump pulled out of the Iran deal in the first Trump administration. They see it as a bargaining chip. They see it as potential deterrence for these kinds of attacks from Israel or America or other countries. And so they were rushing quite quickly. Their argument is always they want nuclear power for civilian
Yeah.
use, and that's part of the negotiation as well.
Right. Well, now Iran, of course, is under heavy attack from Israel. In your judgment, was Iran ever likely to peacefully abandon the ambition of developing a nuclear weapon?
Hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. They're uh, not always truthful about it, but I think this last round of negotiations before Israel started its military campaign, I think there were some creative ideas that were coming out of the Steve Witkoff conversations, and Iran was offering to even work with the Saudis and the Americans for processing and for monitoring, et cetera. So actually, there were some interesting ideas coming. I think Iran has been significantly weakened
Mm.
in the last sort of year and a bit because of Israel's attacks on proxies of Iran. And so they're in a weaker position than they have been in the past. And that's always
Yeah.
helpful for bringing people to the negotiation table.
Yes. So certainly weakened, and it is now pretty widely said that, well, that's one of the reasons Netanyahu saw this as the moment of opportunity to launch the attacks that have been launched, and clearly that is in Netanyahu's mind. How do you read his, in as far as this is clearly possible, how do you read Prime Minister Netanyahu's motives here, the end game that he wants to achieve?
Yeah, it's hard to say with him because, of course, he hasn't ever really spelled out a day after plan for whether it's Gaza or for the region. He just keeps using force. Now, he's been quite successful regionally, but he's been less successful, as we know, dealing with Hamas in Gaza. They're still there. They're still a threat, and the place is completely destroyed. Too many civilians have been killed. But in the region, he's actually done a very good job of reducing the power of Iran's proxies. We saw, transition in Syria to a government that seems so far to be doing the right things. Lebanon has a much more democratic government in place. And the Houthis are even being weakened as well. So it's been kind of a mix of the two. But it's just hard to tell with Netanyahu. He may feel that it's the best time to do it because he was worried Donald Trump was pushing quite hard on the negotiations on the diplomatic track. And he was worried that might derail his aspirations that Iran completely has zero nuclear capabilities at all. So it's just hard to tell with him.
Yes, I mean we see reporting, don't we, over the weekend that President Trump declined to give any support to the idea of an attempt to kill the supreme leader of Iran. And we've just been hearing a moment ago saying that, look, it's for Iran now to start talking immediately, was what he was saying, which suggests that he might get behind the idea of bringing this to an end if that was possible on the Iranian side, doesn't it? He does seem to want that rather than to take part in an escalation.
I think you mean Donald Trump. I
I do
think he
indeed.
does want to return to the negotiation table. The question isn't really Iran only, it's also Israel. Will
Yeah.
Israel hold back enough and agree to let the negotiations continue? So I think Iran would be ready to do that. I don't think Iran wanted this war at all. I don't think America wanted this war. I think Israel is the one that really wanted this war.
Yeah, I mean, there is some, and apparently those very close to Donald Trump in his inner circle, they're very divided about this. Some prefer a more isolationist view. Some prefer to see him more deeply involved. And part of that argument suggests, wonder what you think, Karin, that maybe the president will come around to the view that, yes, get involved deeply, weaken Iran so much militarily that doing business with them is going to be easier.
Well, it's a pretty complicated mess inside the MAGA movement. You have the America First team that are really anti any involvement overseas at all. And that's what a lot of them have been pushing back on Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, those guys don't want any conflict. And they probably don't care about Israel as much as other parts of the movement do and as Donald Trump does. And so I think he is getting some pushback on that. But, we haven't really ever had a clear statement of intent by Donald Trump about pretty much anything. So because we've seen often, even when he makes pronouncements, that he changes his mind quite quickly or he backtracks quite quickly. And so it's just hard to know what his vision is for the region, what his vision is for, the relationship with Iran or, the larger peace deal that we all thought he wanted in the beginning with bringing Saudi and Israel back together. But to do that, Israel would need to make some significant changes with respect to Gaza. So it's just, I don't have a picture, and I'm not sure anybody really does, of what Donald Trump sees as a new Middle East.
No, that has been and clearly is still true. We're going to be watching, aren't we, anything that the president has to say in the course of this G7 summit. He will be speaking, no doubt, maybe regularly as time goes on over the course of that summit. What about the Arab states, Saudi, the Gulf states? They've condemned the Israeli attack. But how much influence do they really have? What sort of players are they in this?
Well, they're pretty significant players. They have a lot of money, especially Qatar, Saudi, and UAE. And I think they're very nervous about the spillover from this. They're all very close, and I think they would like to see an end to this and normalization of ties. I think at the G7, you mentioned the G7, John, I think that's the opportunity. Is I don't think they're going to come up with one group statement, but I think there will be a lot of opportunity behind the scenes to talk to Donald Trump about putting pressure on Netanyahu, because I think that Donald Trump is probably the only person right now that Netanyahu will listen to at the global level.
Yeah.
And so if we are going to return people to the negotiating table, Trump is going to have to really push quite hard, and let's hope he does the right thing.
Yeah, we had some reporting earlier on that Iran was reaching out to some of those Gulf states for them, in turn, to pressure, if pressure is the word, to urge Donald Trump to intervene. So I guess they recognise what you recognise. What seems pretty clear, that is, if there is an influence here, it's Donald Trump, and even his influence at this moment isn't at all clear.
Right. I mean, there's so many factors that it's not just that the war could spread, it's the price of oil, as your correspondent was discussing earlier. There's so many. I mean, we've learned from the war in Ukraine about how many how these wars spread far beyond the areas where the war itself is taking place. The spillover can be global, and it can be really detrimental globally to rich countries and poor countries alike. And certainly with the price of oil being a huge factor in this region, there will be concerns by not just the regional powers, but many further afield.
Yeah. I mean, we're hearing, I don't know how far you focused your attention on the British government, but the British government leadership are talking about just keeping out of this conflict at the moment, which I suppose does mark it's a shift from past days, isn't it? Not so long distant.
Yeah, I mean, I am still based in London. I mean, I think they would like to they would like to play a positive role, and I think they will play a positive role behind the scenes. I think Keir Starmer's done a very good job of that so far, really quietly putting pressure and talking to Donald Trump, and whether it's about Ukraine or whether it's about this particular conflict, I think they are playing an important role. And I think behind the scenes, Keir Starmer and the Canadians and other like-minded countries are trying to come together to speak with one voice, so that when they do speak with Donald Trump, they're sending the same message to him. So I actually think the Brits can play an important role, but they're certainly not going to end the war on their own.
Yeah, and as you say, we're watching the G7 so closely. Karin von Hippel at RUSI, thank you so much.